The farm that feeds itself. Prologue. I never believed in curses. I believed in droughts, in bankruptcy, and bad seasons. But curses, that belonged in ghost stories and Sunday sermons. That was before the Morgan farm. Chapter 1. A letter from nowhere. It all began when I received the letter. The envelope was old, yellowed at the edges, sealed with red wax that had long since cracked. It came without a return address, addressed only to Mr. Jacob Langston, in perfect calligraphy. Inside was a deed. Morgan Farm. Over 200 acres of fertile land, a farmhouse, a barn, and surrounding forest, all legally transferred to me by a great uncle I never knew I had. There was one line in the letter, scrawled in a different hand. The land takes care of itself, and all who live on it, always. Chapter 2. The Arrival. I drove to the property, nestled in the Appalachian foothills of West Virginia, where cell signals died and the world went quiet. The farmhouse stood proud and eerie, untouched by time. The paint had long since faded to gray, but the structure was solid. There were no birds, no insects, only wind whispering through the grass. And then the strangest thing, I found the pantry fully stocked. Fresh produce, jars of meat, sealed and labeled with recent dates. I opened one, beef stew, still warm. Chapter 3. The Neighbor's Warning. I met only one neighbor in those early days, an old man named Elias, who lived a mile down the dirt road. He walked with a limp and stared too long when he spoke. "You inherited Morgan Farm, huh?" he said, not shaking my hand. "That place eats people, son. Not with teeth. Worse. It feeds on them." I laughed. He didn't. "Ask yourself this," he muttered before turning away. "Why don't you see any tractors? Why is the corn never dry? The pigs never thin?" I didn't have an answer. Chapter 4. The Harvest. I tried to ignore Elias's words, burying myself in farm chores. But the truth is, there wasn't much to do. The garden weeded itself overnight. The animals were never hungry, but always fat. One morning I found a basket of apples freshly picked and cleaned sitting on the porch. I hadn't planted any apple trees. Chapter 5. The Basement Door. The basement was locked from the outside. Iron bolts, sealed shut with chains. I didn't open it at first until I started hearing the scratching. Every night at 2:13 a.m., soft scraping echoed from beneath the floorboards. Sometimes it sounded like claws, sometimes like whispers. One night I pressed my ear to the wood. I heard a child's voice say, "He's feeding the roots again." Chapter 6. Blood in the Soil. That fall, the pumpkins grew to the size of wheelbarrows. The corn was sweet as sugar, and the meat from the smokehouse unbelievably tender. Too tender. One night, the old dog I'd brought with me disappeared. I found its collar near the barn, torn and soaked in blood. But there were no tracks, no struggle, just silence. I didn't eat that night. Chapter 7. Dreams of the Past. The dreams started around the second month. I'd see people, families dressed in clothes from different eras, standing in the fields, smiling at me. Their eyes were empty, like the pupils had been scraped out, and always at the end of the dream they'd say, "Thank you for feeding us." Chapter 8. The Journal. I found it hidden in the attic, a leather-bound journal belonging to Thomas Morgan, the farm's original owner. The entries began in 1874. He wrote of a famine that struck the region, and how no one on the farm ever went hungry. He believed the land was sacred. Then his entries turned darker. He described rituals, bloodletting, sacrifices to the soil beneath. His last entry read, "The land must feed, and it has chosen me as its hand." Chapter 9. The Root Cellar. Armed with a crowbar and a floodlight, I broke the chains on the basement door. The air that came out was damp and earthy. The stone steps spiraled down, slick with moss. As I descended, the smell changed from wet soil to rot. At the bottom, I found a room with walls covered in ivy. But it wasn't ivy, it pulsed. Thick, veiny roots crawled across the stone, glowing faintly with a reddish hue. In the center sat a well, deep, bottomless. When I dropped a stone, I never heard it land. I heard breathing. Chapter 10. The Flesh Market. One night I followed the sound of hooves outside and saw shapes. Shadowy figures herding animals not into barns, but into the earth. A patch of soil opened like a mouth, the livestock willingly walking in, heads bowed. Then the ground sealed itself again. The next morning, the meat shed was full. No one had slaughtered anything. Chapter 11. Missing Persons. I looked up Morgan Farm in the local archives. Over the past 120 years, at least 37 people had disappeared after staying on the property. Farmhands, travelers, even census agents. The locals chalked it up to bad luck, or the mountains swallowing them. Every time a disappearance occurred, there was a note in the town paper. Morgan Farm reports record harvests. Chapter 12. Elias's Confession. Elias came one night, shaking with a lantern in hand. "I was part of it once," he whispered. "I helped them feed it." He told me the land chose caretakers. In exchange for prosperity, they had to offer something living. "It started with goats," he said, sobbing. "Then dogs, then tramps, but it never stops being hungry. Never." Before he left, he said, "You stay, and one day you'll feed it yourself." Then he walked into the woods. I never saw him again. Chapter 13. The Storm. A storm came, not rain, but wind, thunder, and the sky split in red veins. The earth groaned. Windows shattered without cause. The crops didn't bend in the wind, they stood tall, staring. That night, someone, or something, stood at the edge of the field all night, watching. In the morning, boot prints led to the well in the basement. They didn't lead back. Chapter 14. The Farm Feeds. I tried to leave. Packed the truck, drove down the long dirt path, only to end up back at the house after 10 minutes. I tried again, this time walking. The forest shifted behind me. Trees reappeared. The sun set and rose twice, but I was still walking. Finally, I gave up. The farm wouldn't let me leave. Chapter 15. Choices. Now every morning there's meat on the table, warm bread in the oven, and every night I hear the door to the basement creak open on its own. There's a list written on the kitchen table in blood-red ink. A hiker, a runaway, a delivery man, 3 names, 3 strangers. I found a map beneath the list. Their locations marked. I haven't decided yet, but I'm hungry. Epilogue. You are next. If you're reading this, maybe you found the same letter I did. Maybe you've inherited Morgan Farm. Maybe you've eaten from it already. If so, ask yourself, why are the eggs still warm? Why is the field already tilled? Why is there meat in the freezer with your name on it?